What we're trying to do is we're kind of creating a catalog or a list of options based on a couple of things, a couple of criteria. Um, we're not so concerned right now in terms of the right answer as much as we are as exploring the possible combinations. So very quickly, if you kind of take a look, that we said that we've got 4 categories, actually 5 in terms of like things that can be an option, but you've only got 8 that we're asking for. So you're not going to be able to exhaust every combination. So already there's a kind of a selection method that happens there. What we're looking at is a kind of example of the layout itself. The difference being that just one of these is populating all 8. So yours would actually, obviously all 8 would be totally different. The one that we're looking at is catalog down at the bottom with the same number. So 8 options. The bottom one that we've got is this kind of breakdown that happens in terms of the information on it down here. So it's all talking about the same ones, but in this case it's telling us we've got 3 supports. Those are indicated by the gray areas. That doesn't mean that these are structural supports from a kind of like any kind of sense. It's more like these are the zones that we want to touch down on. We imagine it happening somewhere in there, right? Partial means it's not totally covering the velodrome, so you can see that I'm open here and I'm open here on the velodrome. Asymmetrical means that it's not aligned on either one of the main axes of the velodrome that Philip was talking about. So this one's kind of not aligned this way and it's not aligned that way in terms of the overall grid. The perimeter is irregular, right? It's not a big rectangle, which is another way to say it. This is center. This is based off the center of this particular grid is based off the bottom left corner, and that's provided in the Rhino model in the Grasshopper definition. And the angle is the angle of rotation. So in this case, it's rotating 26 degrees to the right. That's a negative connotation. So how do we kind of go about making this? It's fairly straightforward. It's like a lot of things. It's a matter of kind of staying organized and kind of keeping in mind your order of operation. But basically, it's going to happen in terms of like a logic standpoint is that that grid that we looked at is based on, when we look at one of these grids, it is supposed to represent the structural system that you've built twice now, both in the kind of static model and in the tensile model. The proportions of the grid tile is what we're going to use for this. So you can see that this has 3 gray tiles. Those are selected tiles. White ones are unselected tiles. The tiles themselves are based on the overall dimensions of your digital model. So let's say we're going to look at our static version of your digital model. That's based on just making a boundary box around it to get the overall size and then gridding that out accordingly. The size in terms of the number of the grid is also a concern for you that you're going to decide on how to deploy it. Everyone's going to have a slightly different proportion when it comes to the outline of their grid. And that's going to already be the first thing that changes. So you go about what you're going to need in terms of input is the digital model of that particular one. So I'll go back for a second and I'll look at what I'm going to look at is an example of the space frame model. And this is the example of the static model. So it's very like what Philip's got here. When we say the static model, it means the one that you didn't do the operations on, right? So it's like what you use for the blue part of your drawing. We're staying with the thing that's based on the tensile because we're going to go back to the physical model as well. This mapping out as digital, we're going to go back to that eventually. So you just need the curves. We're more kind of concerned with the dimensions of it. I've got this right here, and this is the only thing that's in my model. I've got a template that's going to be provided for you. The template's got 2 parts. It's got a 3/16 scale topo map. This is a flat topo map used in the drawings. And this has a drawing guide down here that's going to go out into the drawing. This is already scaled to be the same size as the drawing itself. It's the same grid. The numbers there are just to keep track of which one's which on it. They're the same corresponding numbers. So that's why it's blank. So the first thing I need to do is I need to open up the provided kind of Grasshopper definition. Well, the very first thing I want to do is actually have that model in there, the space frame in there. So I'm going to import it. So that it comes in. So this is coming in at the same, it's a 1-to-1 scale. You don't want anything scaled, so this is the regular size model. So this thing's probably about 20 inches wide or something like that, right? This is our kind of reference geometry. You can put this anywhere you want. I'm just going to put it over here for a second. So this, when I now open up the provided Grasshopper definition, I want the other one. This is an older version. So this Grasshopper definition has a version. So this is one of these modules handles one of these, and it has corresponding. So what this does is it lets you track the data that shows up at the bottom left-hand corner of it. What it wants to do is know what size your space frame is. So this geometry here is what we set multiple geometries to. Goes away, we apply it to our space frame, and hit enter. Okay. So what this component's doing all the work inside. I've got it in a cluster here just to kind of keep it graphically kind of clean. On the left-hand side, you've got your inputs, and the right-hand side, you've got your outputs. The darker purple things are the two things that you're going to end up baking when it comes out to it. In terms of how this thing actually works, it's fairly straightforward. In terms of tracking the logic of it, inside this cluster is actually what's kind of going on. It builds a bounding box around the actual space frame. It then deconstructs it, and when it deconstructs it, what it's doing is it's getting the x and y values of that space frame, and then it's building a grid, and you can see that the x and the y is plugged into the size x, size y of it. The extents in terms of how many are in each count, in each direction, those are actually happening outside here. This is affecting the count that happens. So as you increase it, the grid's going to increase. So if I go back inside that cluster for a second, it's creating the grid. It's then drawing a bounding box around that grid, finding the center, and moving it back to the origin point in your model. So it's moving the grid back to the origin point in your model. Then it's finding that center point, and it's allowing you to move it. So this is going to take in, this is input coming from outside the cluster that says where. And in our case, it's this multi-dimensional slider that moves the grid. So it's going into the cluster, moving the grid frame. After it moves it, it gives you the option to rotate it as well. So this input's coming in, allowing you to rotate it around the center point of the axis. Afterwards, it's giving you an option. This right here is displaying the points, and that's only just kind of displaying the points. It's finding these centroids to actually give numbers to it and display numbers on the outside. These two let us decide whether or not to remove some of these tiles or not for when you have a regular grid. And this one draws a boundary around the grid. So when we look back at this drawing, it's drawing this dark boundary around the entire thing. No matter what the shape is, it's going to come out as a single closed curve that happens. And that's going to be the same process for every time. So in terms of like getting this thing aligned and set up, the alignment happens on the multi-dimensional slider. This has enough kind of range. It should cover everyone's stuff. Go around there. If for some reason it didn't, you can always double click in here and set it to a higher number. These same numbers here feed out on the other side, and they tell you the grid center point. So that's where that goes into the little chart in your drawing. Same thing with the rotation. So when I want to go and say, well, well, my grid's probably too big now, so I'm probably going to take back a little bit in these directions. Maybe I don't need that much. And if when I go to rotate it, the slider here to rotate it will allow me to go in both directions.
Magic.
So right now, let's say that this is getting a little bit closer to what you want. You've got the tile number size. So this is just displaying the numbers for you, and you can make it bigger if you're having trouble seeing it or anything like that. That's just showing you this. The X is referring to the center point of the grid, so you can have an orientation. This is an option here. Let's say I'm doing a regular grid and I want to include the whole thing. I just leave this switch on do not remove any tiles, right? But let's say I do want an irregular grid. I want to start removing some of these tiles. I left click on here and I just pick remove some tiles. And then I tell it which tiles that I want to remove coming out. It's not collecting any data out, but let's say for some reason, and I'm not sure why my grid's not showing up anymore. So. It's probably because I have null values. I got to put some stuff in there. Let's say like up in my extreme corners, I say I'm out for 39 and 38. They're out of here. I'm not using them. So I type in 39, 38. Yeah, that's why I had null values in there. It's going to remove those from the grid. So that's what these numbers correspond for. We're not worried about using them in the drawing. We're gonna use them to kind of track. If I don't remove them, I don't need them. So let's say I'll remove 1, 0. I don't have to do it in any particular order too. I'll say 1, 0, 7, 6, and 32. I can just add them to my list here. Okay. Once I'm happy with this one, when you open this up, this definition one, this entire thing is enabled. And if you guys take a look and see how these are dark gray over here, these kind of sliders and everything else, they're disabled just to not run all 8 at the same time. So what I'm done is when I'm all said and done, and after I bake my geometry, I'm going to take and disable that and enable the next one in the row. And that way, it's going to leave this data output for you, and you could just refer to it when you're doing your drawing. When I want to get my geometry out of here, I'm going to bake it. And there's, like I said, there's 2 things I want to bake. I want to bake the tile outlines, which are here, and I want to do the entire perimeter, which is right here. I would keep these on separate layers to start, so I wouldn't bake them at the same time. You want to right-click it and bake it. When you right-click it and bake it, it's going to let you decide what layer to put it on. And there's a layer for the export that's called tiles. So I'm going to put it on tiles. And I'm going to right-click this one and say bake it. And I'm going to put the perimeter on the perimeters. So I've baked those. Turn off Grasshopper for a second. It's still there. So this is my baked geometry that's sitting on there. The other thing that you got to do is you got to decide which tiles that you actually want to use in terms of to move forward with and to actually hit the site. And I've got 3 or 5 options. So let's say in this particular case, I'll do 5. I'm going to pick the tiles that I want to use here. I'm calling this a zone. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be in the middle of the track. It means I'm interested in this area to connect to the track. What we don't want to worry about is trying to connect dead center in any kind of obstruction view. I think anything outside of that is in play. I'm going to change these to be selected tiles. So I'm going to just right-click and say change object layer. Now, this is ready to go. This is the geometry that I'm worried about. So if I've got my topo lines blocked and I've got this boundary locked, I can grab this geometry and move it. So I'm going to move it over to my drawing now. So I'm going to just use the move command. And for move, I'm going to move from this corner here, which is also just 0, over to this corner here. And I'm going to scale it. Now, I didn't bring my boundary over. I could have turned this off and make a copy of my boundary as well. I could have done that. But since I didn't, I can also just scale it by saying this is my origin point and that's my origin point. And my next reference point. Yeah, that's a sloppy way to do it, though. I don't want to tell you to do it that way, guys. So I'll bring the boundary along. Let's see what it said. Thank you. I'm going to lock that one boundary so I can just use that as a reference. So I'll call this my number 1. And I'm going to scale it to fit. So like a lot of our workflows, we're not going to sit and go to, we wouldn't, when I'm going to do this workflow, I'm not going to sit and go right to Illustrator and start working on line weights or anything like that yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same process for all the drawings. And that way get them all in there. Because of the structure of it, and I keep baking things to the same layer, it's all my drawings are going to be on these 4 layers that happen here. So once it's all said and done, I can go and export everything. But just to kind of bring you back to Grasshopper for a second, once I'm done with one, I want to just take it and select it, and I can hit the spacebar menu, and I can disable it. So that's not the active display right now. It's not working anymore. And I go on to number 2, and number 2 is just zeroed out and starting from scratch. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to hit the spacebar again, and I'm going to enable it. So once that's enabled, I'm going to reset that, right? So you've got a couple options here. I made these as a kind of a modular thing, right? You could leave this particular component. You can always re-reference your space frame, right? Hit right-click and set geometry. You can do that, or you can enable this initial one that you had and plug it into the copies so that you don't have to keep re-referencing every time. You can plug it directly in there, and it's going to be that way. It's just going to use the same space frame geometry, and you can just plug it into your other ones so you don't have to keep re-referencing or anything like that. But it's always going to be referring to the same thing. Does that make sense? So like now that this gun's active, you can see that this one is starting off from scratch down here. It's got some basic values set up, but it's down at 0, and I would start all over again, repeat and rinse on that process. And once I'm all set, so let's say I've done this multiple times, I've kind of explored a lot of different combinations, and I'm ready to go. In your mind's eye here, I've got 8 very kind of enticing drawings that I'm really excited about. I'm going to export it. It's ready to go. We don't have to do or worry about make 2D or anything like that because it's already 2D. It's always been 2D. I'm going to take it out of here. I'm leaving the kind of annotation notes and everything else out of the story. I'll take this guy though. I'll bring this along. So this is the kind of the grid. This is Really important. Make sure you're in the top viewport. You should not be. We're going to do CMYK. You're going to make sure it preserves it at a full scale. So this drawing's already at the right size. So it's a 1-to-1. So going back, this is what the template looks like. It's got our numbers out here. I'm going to open up my drawing. That's the wrong one. That's old news. So I've got this all set up. It's got the topos. It's got all my geometry. I'm just going to make sure I've got everything. Control A, Control C, copy it. I'm going to go back to my template here. And I've got the layer set up underneath drawings that I want to push this into. Mine came out up top, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab them all and put them under the drawings layer to make them sub-layers. And then I'm going to just drag them all over. So my layers, my topo layers were a light gray color, so they're not showing up right now. But I've got all my kind of information that's set up in here. You just want to make sure that your drawings show up on the bottom. We've got numbered tags that are going to sit on top of the topo information. So when I look at my perimeter, that's the overall outline, and we've got a guide here. That's a 2-point black stroke. True black stroke. So this has our old template on it. It's true black. I'm going to make that 2. I've got the actual tile outlines on another layer. Okay, those are a 0.5 black stroke. And then I've got the selected tiles that I've got. Those also have a 0.5 stroke in black. So I'm going to pick my true black. But they also have a fill. Those are going to be, so I'm going to pick my fill here. And under the swatches, there's going to be a 20% gray that I'm going to apply to those. And I'm also going to make sure that they're under multiply. So I'm going to do opacity, change that from normal. I'm not going to change the percentage. It's still 100, but I'm changing the multiply. So it's going to make the things below it darker without changing any color. So it's going to show up as 100% as typical opacity, except for when there's things underneath. The last kind of information that I've got to do in terms of the actual drawing is the site plan layer, which has the topographic information on it. Right now, it's like this white kind of color. Those topo lines are this 50% gray color, and they're going to have a 1/4 of a point stroke. There's a lot of them. They're going to be nice and light. They're selected right now on a white layer, so that's why they're not showing. So if you've done these all and you've kept it all layered, you've actually done the line work for the entire drawing at that point. It's a done deal. It's not super complicated. It's focused on legibility and comparison from like one option to another. The last thing you want to do is you want to fill out the data here. So this looks like gibberish right now because it's all overlaid on top. All your options are available here. So in my case, looking at mine, I've got partial coverage. I've got parts of the track that are exposed, like here and here, and a corner here. So I don't fully cover up the track. So when I go to my text here, it's partial. The alignment is definitely asymmetrical. So I just start deleting and it'll start clearing out. The perimeter is irregular. So all this text is center justified, so all you have to do is delete the thing that it's not, and the spaces around it, and it'll automatically center out. This stuff I don't have memorized, so I'm going to go back into Grasshopper and take a look at it. I disabled it so the juice is not going on it in terms of where this stuff is, so I've got to turn it back on to get my numbers back. And I'm going to round it off to 84.5, 89.5. Degree of rotation is 57.9. I already forgot my degree of rotation. 57.9. Make sure if it's negative, you put negative in there. Was mine negative? Mine was not negative. All right. That's a typo. More importantly, your name. Even more importantly, your instructor. You want to export it as a single PDF, just as before, and it is going to be a done deal.